Well, good evening, gentlemen. I am so excited that you're here for the leadership training for proven men to learn how to lead an actual support group for one of millions of men in our country that are struggling and they don't know where to turn. We have so many men contacting us every day saying, I need an accountability partner. I need a small group. I need some help. And every day I'm saying, but there aren't enough men to walk alongside of you. And so what you're a part of today is something exciting, and it's growing, and we're starting to see groups form all over the country. And so I'm really glad that you're here. And so what I hope to do today is give you some training so that you'll be comfortable and confident in journeying with another man that says, I want to either build or retain sexual integrity in my life. And we know that's true for all of us. All of us need that. All of us do. And so regardless of your background to wherever you were at in your own journey, whether you were actually addicted or struggling, or maybe it wasn't that big of an issue in your life, but you have a burden and a heart to help walk alongside another man that says, I can't do this on my own. And so I'm really excited about that today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some word pictures and whiteboard some things out and show you a couple things. First one is, why do men get stuck in it? It helps us to journey with another man to say, why is it a stronger pull for some men versus others? Because it may be a much stronger pull for the men you want to walk with. So I'm going to equip you in understanding why do they get stuck there. And then we're also going to talk about, well, how do you get unstuck? What's the cure? So we're going to talk about the cause and the cure. So that's what we're going to accomplish tonight. And we're going to follow the proven path for sexual integrity. So why am I here? I get that asked all the time. Why are you talking to me? Why are you doing this? And so one of the things that I want to do is let's just talk about a verse. This verse is why I'm here. Praise be to the God and comfort of our Lord Jesus Christ. Okay? So what does the Bible say about the God of all compassion and the God of all what? He's the God of all comfort. This is the God that we serve. We have a God of all comfort. And what does this God does? He comforts us. So we've got a God of comfort who comforts us. And why does he comfort us, or how does he do this? He says, I will comfort you in all of your trials, all of your troubles. He says, I'm going to comfort you those. But then he adds one thing. And I just love this about how the gospel works. He says, and here's why I'm going to comfort you. I am going to comfort you so that you may comfort someone else with the exact same comfort you yourself has received. That's the way it works. Jesus plans to use us to comfort others. So he first comforts us. So he comforts us so we can comfort others. I love that. So I'm not here because I want to be here. I'm here because I'm compelled to be here. He comforted me through 20 years of sexual addiction, and I'll explain my testimony in a few minutes, but he comforted me through 20 years of a sexual addiction that I could not break free from alone. He brought alongside other men in my life and comforted me. And now I'm compelled to pass that on. And this is what's exciting to me about you wanting to be in leadership training. And so let's do this. See the picture? Beautiful picture of my wife's. I'm not just bragging that my wife is beautiful or it's a handsome couple. Well, it was 27 years ago. So we've been married 27 years. But the reason I put that picture up there is you can't tell from looking at someone if they're a sex addict. You just can't. You can't look at that guy and say, oh, that's a sex addict. You can't tell. In fact, let me tell you about our relationship. I met this woman, beautiful woman, 28 years ago. We've been married 27 years. We got really involved in the church. In fact, we were so involved in the church, my wife was hired as the church family counselor. So I married the family counselor. She helps marriage counseling and all the women who have problems with their husbands or problems in their own life. So that's the woman I married, was the family counselor. And so my churches fell in love with her, and she was just this model woman. And I got saved probably a little later in life. I was in law school at the time. I was about 25 years old when I accepted Jesus into my life. And bang, right away, I was out handing tracts on the subway, going door to door. I was at Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon service, Wednesday night. I was at church so much. I really should have an honorary MDiv or something. I was at church so much in a Bible-believing church. And so the church handed over a lot of responsibilities to us, leading small groups, leading Bible studies, counseling. We were one of those model couples. To all of the outside people look on the outside and says, wow, In fact, I'm sure that the pastor said, there's one couple we don't have to worry about. Whew. You know, you just look at them. They're so involved, and they're a handsome young couple. They're one couple you don't have to worry about. But let's just backtrack a little bit. Let's look on the inside of what was really going on in my life. My generation, my story is probably pretty similar. I found Playboy magazines from a relative's house. And bang, I don't know if I was 10, 11, 12 years old, found Playboy magazines. At that age, your hormones start developing, and I discovered masturbation at the same time. So you put those two things together as a young adult, and it's toxic. It was like mesmerizing. It was just like, wow, what a cocktail, a recipe. For me, it was a recipe for addiction, actually. And so I could not wait until I found someone else's, where I would, find another fix, because my mind was like, wow, this is awesome, this is exciting. But at the same time, I felt a little bit of guilt and shame, but it was so good. Since we didn't have smartphones at the time, I had to develop my own way of doing things. So I would either look at the JCPenney's catalog section for the ladies' underwear, or I would say, you know what, who needs any of that? I just have to look at a woman and undress her with my eyes. So from the earliest ages that I can remember, I was undressing every woman with my eyes, imagining fantasies and thoughts into my mind. So that started from puberty, really. And every day I would purposely look at women and undress my eyes. I did the math one time, and I was doing it like every woman I saw. And if you see a couple hundred women a day, that's a couple hundred sexual fantasies in my mind every day. I did the math one time, and it worked out to be about 1 million sexual fantasies that are in here. Okay, so this is the clean outside of the cup guy with 1 million fantasies in here. So let me just fast forward a little bit. So I get into law school. Then someone explains who Jesus Christ is in a way that I've never heard before. And I have this born again experience of like just got on fire for the Lord. I'm thinking, this is awesome. Now I'm going to stop lusting, looking at porn, stop masturbating. This is awesome. Well, that didn't happen. And I'm just confused. I'm like, why did it not just go away? Oh, because I'm single. It'll just go away when I get married. I'm thinking, whew, what a relief. Because I'm thinking, I'm now born again. I'm on fire. I'm doing all the services that I can for the church and it just didn't go away. So now guess what? I got married. And you see the picture. I got married to a beautiful woman. Now I'm a Christian, I'm married, it'll just go away, and I'm so excited about that. Guess what? It didn't just go away. In fact, even on my honeymoon, I find myself second looking all over the place. And when you go on a honeymoon on a beach, you know what I'm talking about, man? It's like, this is not going well. So it's not going well. I continued with my former practices almost to the same extent after I got married than before. And so I thought, well, if I just clean the outside of my cup a little bit more, if I just do a little bit more service at church, if I just read the Bible a little bit more, if I just share the gospel, if I just do a little bit more, clean on the outside of the cup, I'm like that 99%er. I'm like 99%, God, that's got to be good enough, right? But at the same time, I felt all this guilt and shame. And then remember, I married the family counselor. You think I'm going to go tell the family counselor, hey, I'm looking at every woman, your best friends, women on the stage at church, pastors' wives, nobody's off limits. I'm going to go tell the family counselor this? I don't think so. I think I'm going to go tell the pastors, I'm lusting after every woman in church? I don't think so. So I says, here's what I will do. I will just have the cleanest outside of the cup that there is. And I justify, I says, well, you know what? It's only in my mind. As long as it stays in my mind, no one gets hurt. So I built this wall around me, like a force field. Don't let anybody within. And that meant not even my wife. I was like, if she knew the real me, she would hightail it out of here. And if the church knew the real me, they would kick me out of here. So I says, I just have to keep it a secret. So I made a vow to myself, a covenant, a promise. I will never tell another living soul that I masturbate or look at porn. I would just deny it. It wasn't me. Even if they caught me on a video, I'd say that's a clone. I mean, it was just like, that's not me. Then 7 years into my marriage, with the same thing over and over, the same ritual daily of memorizing every woman I met and dressing with their eyes, then culminating every night in masturbation and fantasy, I developed that whole pattern. 7 years into my marriage, basically on my 7th anniversary of my wedding, I had to go to my wife and says, I got some bad news for you. She's like, what? I was like, what's this bad news? I just asked your best friend to go to bed with me. Wow. She's like, wow. Okay. I said, doesn't stop there. I told her the whole story. I told her everything, and plus even more. I gave her like the 20-minute version of my story. I told her the whole story. And I thought for sure that I was going to get thrown out of the house. And instead she said, you know what, this is not a he problem. This is a we problem. And if you're willing to work on it, I'm willing to work on it too. So the good news is my wife didn't just run. So I come and go tell the senior pastor at my church. Told him the whole story too. And he cried and he hugged me, told me I was a sex addict, didn't know what to do with me, but he'll try to help figure out something. 27 years ago, there wasn't a proven man. So he says, I don't know what to do with you, but we're going to do something with you. But he didn't throw me out of the church. So I'm like, Satan, you big fat liar. Okay, my wife didn't leave and the church didn't kick me out. So I was hiding and staying in this sin, isolated and by myself for 27 years, plus the many years before marriage too. So now I have a burden. Okay, my burden is to help other men. So I went through 12-week intensive counseling and Bible studies and the things that I'm going to teach you how to lead men through. I did that myself. And so praise be the Lord, that was 20 years ago. So it's 20 years since I've looked at porn, masturbated, or had an affair. And so my burden now is to say, how do we help other men that have made similar vows as me that I'm never going to tell another human being, but at the same time can't break free alone? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk a little bit about the cure. First of all, let's talk about how big of a problem it is in the church. I hired the Barna Group. They're a nationwide survey company, real recognized. When I hired them to go do a nationwide survey for proven men. And here's some of the stats we found with regard to porn. 77%, that's more than 3 out of 4 men that are aged 18 to 30. So that's our young generation, the young group. 77% of them look at porn every month. That's over 3/4. 65% of all men of all age group, and I'm talking churchgoers, I'm not talking the world, I'm talking churchgoers. 65% of church-going men have looked at pornography at work in the past 3 months. At work. You get fired for doing stuff like that. So 65% of the men that call themselves Christians were willing to risk getting fired because they wanted to sneak a peek at porn. 55% of married men, doesn't just go away, guys. 55% of married Christian men look at porn at least monthly. Let's talk about addiction. 1 out of 3 of our young generation says, I'm not just looking at porn, I'm flat out addicted to it. I cannot stop. And that's probably a couple hours, up to 10 hours a day they're looking at it. So our college kids are getting bad grades in school because instead of turning in their paper on time, they're looking at porn 10 hours a day. We get report after report of that. So we got 1/3 of our generation are getting lost to pornography. As far as affairs go, married Christian men, 1 out of 3, 35% of Christian men had an actual sexual affair. Not just an emotional one, but a sexual affair. That's what's going on within the church. And that's why I know you guys are here to saying, I want to be part of the solution. I want to help men that are trapped and struggling. So let's talk about what's the draw. Why do men go there in the first place? The Bible tells us that when tempted, no one should say, God is tempting me, for God doesn't tempt us. He's not in the business of tempting us to look at porn. So let's get that out of our mind right away. But each one, when they are tempted, we drag ourselves away from God. We kind of put blinders on and say, I'm going to go do it my own way. I'm going to go look and lust and go after things that it's that easy button that we're looking for. And the Bible warns us that when you give in to your own evil desires, eventually you drag yourself so far away that it gives birth to death. It's that kind of death that I was talking about. Even though I was married and leading in the church, that outside of the cup, I was dead on the inside. That's the kind of death that it brings about. So let's talk about magnets for a minute. This verse is saying we drag ourselves away. It's almost like there's a magnetic pull towards Jesus, but we have to drag ourselves away from magnets. You ever had magnets as a kid and play with them? I love playing with them. Put them, opposites. They attract. The other ones, they see how far you could shoot a magnet. I just love how magnets work. Where, in fact, I don't know if you knew this or not, but the Earth is a magnet. Of course, some of you science guys are just like, oh, wow, that's easy. The North Pole, South Pole, there's magnets. But we're going to talk about the magnetic pull for a little bit. Every one of us has something we're pulled towards, okay? Some of us, we just can't get enough of sports, whether it's football, basketball, March Madness, whatever sports. We are just almost like addicted. We're just drawn. We just love our sports. Other men say, like, it's not just sports for me. Sports is one thing, but I want to chase after the dollar. I really want to. I just want to have a big fat bank account. And maybe kind of going along with that is we take our identity, our pride out of our jobs, our careers. We really just like, wow, that's something that really pulls me strong. How about this one? You want to talk about strong? How about our devices? It's like, how many of you already, but your cell phone's already buzzing in your pocket. You're just dying to check your emails. Got to get my tablet out. And maybe this one. How about, if I haven't gotten you on any of these yet, how about food? Food, yes, glorious food. Like I love food. Now the deal is each one of us have a magnetic pole that's different from another guy. Some are going like, money, I can take it or leave it. That's just a small magnet for me. Others like sports, I just can't get enough. My fantasy league, food, maybe put a really, really big magnet there. Point I'm trying to make is some of these things have different magnetic poles than others. And I don't have my little magnet demagnetizer thing. I have a 70-pound magnet here. And I forgot to bring my little tool to take it off. I actually can't pull it off. And maybe after the presentation, I'll see if anybody else can pull it off without a tool or without cheating. But it's a 70-pound magnet. That magnetic pull is really strong. Okay? I'm reserving that one for this, for porn. This magnetic pull is so strong, I can't physically remove that by myself. I'm going to need help to remove that one. For food, I could probably beat food issues. I could probably beat some of these other issues, but this one I couldn't. I could not pull that magnet apart by myself. And that's helpful for you to understand, because some are going like, that one isn't my 70-pound magnet, but I still want to help somebody who it is. So it will be helpful for you to know that some of these magnets are going to be stronger for some things than others. You're like, well, this one might be my 70-pound magnet, that one's not. And some in this room will go like, that's my magnet, that's my 70-pound magnet. I can't pull that one off of here with my fingertips by myself. That's the way it is for so many men. Remember some of those stats? We'll just go over a couple of them again. 17% of men. So it's really the minority of men have a smaller magnet, one that they can deal with on their own. 17% can deal with it on their own. 50% are looking at porn at least weekly. So 50% are looking at it weekly. I'm saying that's probably a 50, 70-pound magnet. But what about the 1 out of 3 younger generation that are so flat out addicted to it? I don't even have a magnet big enough here to show you what it is for them. And so I don't know if this helps you understand that we're all drawn to something, but for those drawn to this, they need you, because they can't get this magnet themselves. And so your role here, our goal for you is to equip you to help men that have this magnetic pull. So that's 83% have a really strong magnetic pull for pornography or lust or some sexual integrity issue. That's 83% need help. And that's why you're here, and I'm thrilled by that. If I would go in the right direction, that will help too. What happens to those 83%? You wonder why the church is dying today? The church is dying because 83% of men, of Christian men, feel disqualified to lead. They're thinking, if they knew the real me, if they knew my lust issue, if they knew about the pornography, if they knew about that, they wouldn't want me to serve. So unlike me, who jumped into service maybe to hide my addiction by I'm the cleanest outside of the cup in the world, 83% of men feel guilt and shame and disqualified, and therefore I call them bench warmer Christians. Oh, they know about Jesus, and they believe, and they want to follow him, but they're like, I'm disqualified to lead. Can you imagine what would happen if we get 83% of Christian men off of the bench and back into serving the Lord that don't feel disqualified? So how do you escape the pull? Men need two types of help to escape this pull. The first one is they need to understand, what is the pull? What is the cause? What is it that really drives me and draws and pulls on me? So we need to educate the men that we're going to help. And the second thing is we need to give them a helping hand. We need to walk alongside of them. And we're going to show you how, at the second half of this presentation, we're going to show you how to do that. So let's just talk about what is the root cause that really keeps a man trapped with that big, strong magnet. If you look at your hand, and we just use your hand as an example or analogy for each one of these fingers, we're going to call it a sin issue. And for each man, it's going to be a different sin issues for each finger. For me, maybe it was like, this one was masturbation, this one is lust, maybe this is greed or envy, judgmental attitudes. You can fill in your own sin issue for that. But when I was struggling with my lust and sexual integrity issues, the one that was the most embarrassing to me is the one you never, ever hear anyone talk about, is masturbation. I was so embarrassed by that, I just pleaded with God for 20-some years, for a quarter of a century. I says, God, just take away that desire to masturbate. I know you don't want me doing it, so just take the desire away. And I begged him and pleaded with him, and he didn't, and I couldn't figure out why not. Well, maybe some of you in this room will help me understand that. It's like, this sin I don't like, God. I don't care about the other sins in my life. Just take away the one I want you to take away. God doesn't work that way, and aren't we glad he doesn't? Can you imagine if he did it, if he just said, you know what, Joel, I'm just going to take away the one ugly sin and let you become a proud, selfish SOB and do all these other things and just keep trampling on people and envy and judgmental. Just do those things because you don't mind them. I'm going to take away the one thing that you just hate. I'm just going to instantly take it away and leave you like that. So I'm like, I'm so glad. I'm like, thank you, God, that you didn't just take it away. Here I thought he wasn't answering me. He was giving me the best answer of all. But what if there's a root issue that feeds all of these sins? If there's a root that fed them all, wouldn't you want to go after the root? So I need to help men. You need to help men understand there's a root, a deeper issue than lust. Porn isn't the problem. There's a root issue that feeds them all. If I feed them all, won't it lessen all of the sins and make me a proven man? Won't it make me that whole and complete man that I want to be? That godly man, that godly husband and father or brother. So the Lord revealed to me, he said, the sin issue, Joel, is selfishness and pride. That's what's feeding your desire to lust and chase after fantasies. That's what's chasing these things. So if you do business with that, that will lessen the pull of all of these. And that's God's goal for us anyway, not just to be not a, I'm not going to let's just have a no masturbation club. Let's have a no porn, zone. God's like, that's my idea of Christianity, is just a no porn zone? He says, no, I want you all to be proven men. So that's the cool thing, is we can explain that. So what's the cure for selfishness and pride? I remember the first time someone told me that I was proud. I said, you SOB, I'm not proud. I just wanted to, who dare you call me? And I'm thinking like, ooh, that sounds a little proud to me. It's like, and I'm going like, pride? Selfish? I don't think so. So I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to test that theory. So I went in my room and I got a blank piece of paper. I just started writing down all the ways in which I'm selfish. So let's see, that can't be that many. I just started writing down, it's like, first one in line for pizza, take 6 pieces, and the dessert right away in case they run out. I just started writing down all the ways. That's just with food. Let me just pick a topic. Driving, I want to talk about driving. People stop at yellow. That means floor it. You're going 60, that's 25 over, get in the right lane. I started writing down all the ways in which that's just food and driving. You want me to continue? I started writing down every way in which, every conversation I wanted to be about me. How can I twist this conversation and it comes back to me? So it's always about me, my rights, my this, my that. I started writing down, and that list started growing and growing and growing and growing. At some point, finally my heart started to melt. It's like, oh my gosh. Move away, Paul. I'm the chief of all sinners. It was like, wow, selfishness and pride. I want to be served. I mean, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I started thinking 7 years of my marriage of the way I've been so selfish to my wife. I mean, that'd be an hour discussion, wouldn't it, of all the ways I was selfish at home. So I wrote all these things down. It says, that's not who I am. I really am a believer. I am a Christian. That's not who I am. I want to do business with pride and selfishness. That was my number one enemy. I don't want to just be like a dandelion pulling off those little petals on the end. It's like that root. I'm going after that root. And once I started dealing with that root issue, I started to change from the inside out, across the board, which included the one thing that I didn't like. So to me, the mission or the goal is to help men become proven across the board in their lives. And as you do that, it lessens the grip of all sins, including the ones we find distasteful, including the porn, the sexual integrity issues. But the other thing a man needs, because that's one, now I understood. Now I know where the game, isn't that a great thing, men? Don't we want a game plan? I need a game plan. Well, you don't even know what field you're on. You don't even know how to get in the game until you understand the pride and selfishness are the public enemy, not the porn. So now I want to get in the game. But man, I've got 20 years of backwards thinking to undo. That's not just going to happen overnight. That magnetic pull is really strong. I can't do that one on my own. So now I understand what I need to go after, but I need a helping hand. I haven't found any men that can do this on their own. Oh, I know of the stories. There's every 1 out of 10,000 men that just says, God just instantly took it away from me. I'm like, praise be to the Lord Jesus Christ, God of all comfort and compassion. I love that he did that for you. But for the rest of us, for the 99.9% of us, who's going to comfort us so we can comfort somebody else? If you just took it away, I wouldn't probably be here. I'd be like, how come you can't stop? I did. So for the 99% of us, he's going to comfort us in a long, slow process that requires us to give everything to him and to put all 6 elements of a proven life together. If we do all of those things, like, wow, isn't that what the church really wants from us when they say the exchanged life? So we need a helping hand. In fact, the Bible says to pity the man who doesn't have someone to help him. Let me quote it. Let's quote that verse. 2 are better than 1 because they have a good return for the labor. If either of them falls down, the other can help pick them up. But pity the man who has no one to help them up. That's in the book of Ecclesiastes. When you look at the proven acronym, the N, the last letter of proven, the N means networking. Okay? You can't have a proven man without the N. In fact, what does proven spell without the N? Prove. Prove it to me that I can't beat this sin on my own. What does that sound like? Pride. You're not beating this on your own, guys. Most of us aren't beating it on their own. They need a man like you to walk with them. We need accountability. In fact, the N for networking is more than just accountability. We end up lying to accountability partners. We need a network partner, not an accountability partner. I just need someone to ask me every day, look at porn? No, thanks, goodbye. Sooner or later, just going to say, yeah, no, and just start lying to them. Networking means encouragement, journeying with another man, not just asking them when's the last time they looked at porn. So we'll teach you how to do that. So our culture today, we've got these 83% of churchgoers are hiding and hurting. And that's why you're here today, to learn how to help them, because that guilt and shame is keeping them on the bench. They're flat out afraid. They're afraid to come up to another guy and says, hey, I struggle with masturbation. You ever think someone's come up to you and say that? Hey, I look at porn. You want to help me? They don't even know how to ask, let alone what the root issue is. They just know they need help. And that's your role. They need to go through our 12-week study and have a network partner. They don't need to tweet this, just pray, it'll go away. They don't need a church or a pastor or a friend or a brother that just says, pray about it. Just ask God more. No, that's not the way God designed this. He designed it slow on purpose so that we can go through this growth process at a pace that we can handle, that we understand what it means to stop being selfish across the board. It's a journey. It's a completely undoing of our backwards thinking. And that's a process on purpose, but it takes time and it takes accountability and a network partner. And setbacks are going to happen. Whether you're a leader or the person you're leading, setbacks are going to happen. Most of my leaders that I have trained have had setbacks themselves. And at first I'm like, man, I must not be doing something right. How come people are having setbacks as though reading my book's going to change somebody? You know, as I had to get past my own pride and selfishness. No. Setbacks are not the problem. In fact, my tagline, my encouraging word is setbacks, okay? The mark of a proven man is not the absence of sin, okay, but how you respond to a setback. As far as I know, there's only one perfect man ever, named Jesus Christ. The rest of us have setbacks. And you might as well. In fact, if you're going to be a leader, I'm going to warn you up front, leaders, you're going to be under attack, because who doesn't want you comforting others? Who doesn't want you? We're going to have a spiritual battle, so put your armor on. Most of my leaders call me up and says, I know you told me it's going to be a spiritual battle, but oh my gosh. So don't run from it. Embrace it. It says now we know that we are doing God's work, because we're going to be tempted too. So put on your own armor. Have your own accountability in place. Two things I want to cover. Two things, because people say, like, when a guy gets it, what does it look like in a man's life? Two things that men have in common, the guys that really get it and start walking in victory. The first one is that they make this initial decision, or almost the opposite the covenant that I had that I wouldn't tell anybody. But this covenant isn't that. This covenant is, I'll do whatever it takes. Excuse me, the first one is it's not an option. I skipped to the second one. The first one is that porn is no longer an option in my life, no matter what. No matter what. It's just not an option. I'll never look at porn again. Thinking, okay. The difference between that and says I'll try harder. If I say I'm just not going to do it anymore, I left room to do it. So if I get a bad day at work, or my wife doesn't want intimacy or something, I left room for that. But because I remember the first day that I said, porn, masturbation, no longer an option no matter what. I remember the day I said that, because it was a day I was scared out of my bloody mind. It was the scariest day of my life. I had 20-some years of using this as a coping mechanism to one day saying, I'm never going to use my coping mechanism again. I was so scared, that's why the second prong has to come into place. I was so scared that I says, God, I'll do whatever it takes to fulfill number one. That's the last day for me. And I'm not saying don't judge your life by mine, because setbacks can happen, and they often do. But that's the last day that I looked at porn. Because what do you think it means, whatever it takes? If I'm never going to masturbate again, what do you think I have to cut out? Porn, lust, all of those things. Fantasy, staying up wee hours a night, rehearsing in my mind my sexual fantasies. If I do that, I'm going to masturbate. So I said, if I'm never going to masturbate again, I can't do those other things. So that's when real change happened. And I was scared to death. I go, I'm not strong enough to do this. Talking to my wife, talking to my pastor, and I said, you need an accountability partner. So I get an accountability partner. I got counseling, and we went through the same program type that I'm going to explain to you. I did. And when I walked alongside another man, he says, how are you doing? I said, it's horrible. It's the hardest battle of my life. I remember I worked in D.C. taking the subway. There's 250,000 women taking the subway every day. So I remember I used to look at every one of them that I could possibly in one day. And I'm going like, I can't, if I even look above her ankles, I'm going to have a lustful thought. So I remember riding on the subway, holding my Bible, doing a Bible study. And every time I looked above a woman's ankles, I just looked with lust. There's no such thing as a 3-second rule, right? 3 seconds, then I'll look away. No, it's 3 nanoseconds, and I know I lusted. So I took captive every thought, called it sin. Not an option, whatever it takes. Once I started embracing that, and then put into place the proven path, which we'll talk about, and the study. So I put all of those things together, and I started to grow. In the first 3 months, it was horrible. It was hardest battle of my life. But I remember at the end of 3 months, kind of popped my head out of the foxhole and looking around like, wow, I'm not in the same place I started. But then I got like, whoa, don't get pride, don't get selfish on yourself. And I hunkered back down with my accountability, and I just kept going. 3 years later, my church asked me to be an elder in my church. So it's like, this is awesome. Instead of going from a pastor to falling and just the reverse, let's reverse that. Instead of falling, let's take the broken and equip them to be the leaders. And that's what we want to do, is we want to equip people. So let's just talk about taking captive every thought. If we don't do business with our thought life, it's just a matter of time before you look at porn or have an affair. If you aren't taking captive the thought life, you'll even have an affair. You're like, well, I'm not going to have an affair. Well, okay, then we look like 35% of married Christian men are going to have an affair because they didn't take captive every thought. They indulged in the little flirtations at work. They indulged. So you need to train the men. It's the thought life where the battle's going to be won or lost. It's not the porn. Porn's not the problem. Our thought life is a problem. So here's a tip that I will use to help guys in that process. The 3 R's. Reading, writing, and arithmetic, right? Remember the 3 R's? Of course, I don't remember how those all start with an R, but not the school I went to, but reading, writing, and arithmetic. But our 3 R's are recognize that you're having a thought. You're like, what do you mean? I said, do you know how often you daydream and don't even realize when a woman walks by and your head turns? It's like, recognize when you're having a thought, whether it's the second look or whether it's just an old memory coming back into your brain. Recognize right away. Kind of like a bouncer at the door. It's like, okay, there's a thought and it's knocking at my door. So I have to, with my little bouncer at the door, says, I'm not going to take any pleasure. I'm going to ruin that thought. I don't let it finish. If you start finishing that thought for 3 seconds or 33 seconds or 3 minutes, I'm going to look at porn. I'm going to do all kinds of things. So the goal is to deal with our thought life. So you recognize you're having an impure thought, ruin that moment, but then you got to replace it. You do have to replace it with something else, whether it's a scripture memory verse, praying for a parent or a loved one. Sometimes the best I can muster up is I'm just going to get up and go for a walk into the parking lot. I'm going to have to replace it with something. If you do the 3 R's, that will give you a fighting chance, right? You're going to still do all these other things, but we have to go after our thought life. The PROVEN acronym stands for being passionate for God, repentant in spirit, open and honest, victorious in living, eternal perspective, and network with other proven men. When Mark's done, we're going to take a little break, then we're going to come back, and we're going to explore what those 6 are in a little bit more detail. But then, how does the 12-week study incorporate those into a person's life to bring about the healing?